Greetings, YouTube. Today I'd like to do a bit of a design critique with this. Yes, this is a plastic watering bottle, watering can. I guess you'd call it a can. Well, just watering container. Um, why do I want to critique this? Well, I'll get to that in a minute. I see this a lot. It sits in my bathroom. My wife uses it to water the plants that we keep in there, which is pretty much the only room that we can keep plants in indoors because it's the only place that we can lock them away from the cats. So this gets a fair amount of use for all the different plants in there. So having looked at it for quite some time now, years now, I have come to the conclusion there are things about this that I question. First of all, aesthetically, I think this should have been higher. I think it would have been aesthetically more pleasing if this and this were the same height. Maybe there was a fault. Maybe this was supposed to be longer and it cut off because there was a failure at this end. Who knows? But if you had to make a mold that could hold, that could make this, the mold's wider than that. So there really isn't any reason you could have done it. But they didn't. That was their choice. But it would also give you a little bit more reach, which is always an advantage when you have trying to water something. Speaking of watering, I really like this, both because of the parallels here. I like that shape, but because it gives you two uh, lifting modes. You like this when you're going downward, or like this when you're going upwards. Lots of them have round things, and I find that, well, theoretically it gives you more options, but having a flat section I find more comfortable to hold. Um, so I appreciate that. This is an asymmetric hole, which makes sense. A lot of the watering cans I've seen had central holes, but you can't you can't pour water here. You need to pour water here. So having an asymmetrical hole makes a lot of sense. You just put it like this, you fill it up, you're good to go. For those that are concerned about these kind of things, it is in fact made in the USA. I don't know if that matters to folks. It is also made from number 2, which means that it actually is recyclable. Number 1 and number 2 are recyclable for real. The rest of plastics are pretty much not recyclable. They just like to put the number there to make people feel good. Um, and here's the critique. Okay, now, I don't know if anyone has ever worked on making products that come in molds. Molds are large blocks of steel that have been machined very carefully to produce products. They are expensive. Um, multi-part molds, ones that have internal structures, could cost $250,000. And I'm not being facetious. Ones like this are probably less expensive because they're more static. There probably are no mercurial components to this. It's going in there, air is being blown into it, which expands the plastic, fills the container up, and you're done. Um, uh, It's got numbers on the sides, okay? And they're nice enough that they're ounces on this side, and they are in metric on this side. So we got zero point 0.5, 1 liter, and 1.5. On this side we have 16, 32, and 48 ounces. Now, when you have to machine in components like this into a mold, it significantly increases the cost. If it were a smooth surface or this kind of textured surface, if that was the same thing everywhere, the mold would be less expensive. In addition, even though this is just plastic, over time, it will wear down steel. Believe me, I have seen materials softer than this wear down steel over time. Um, so that means that those numbers will eventually become blurry, and that will eventually require the mold to be scrapped or to be repaired, where you braze in new steel into those locations, then you recut uh, the numbers and letters into there. And again, more money, okay? When it would be just perfectly fine to have this thing without any numbers or letters on it at all. But why do you say? Why isn't having those letters and numbers on your container useful? Because then you can know relatively, with a fair degree of specificity, how much water you have in the container. How do you read them? This is black and opaque. This is an asymmetrical hole. You cannot see anything inside this container. I would have to shine a flashlight specifically in there to have any chance of seeing those numbers in reverse. And let me check on something, see if I can feel it. Yeah, and they're almost flush. So telling with any, you can barely feel that notch. So I might be able to get to the notch if I took the effort to shine a flashlight directly inside this thing to see what my water level is. Whereas I can just glance in and know that it's not gonna spill out when I go to do this. And that's all I need to do. So they went to great, they over-designed this, they over-engineered it, they overproduced it, and created something that was an absolute waste of their time and money. And that serves the customer no purpose. You cannot read those numbers and letters from the outside because it's opaque, or from the inside because it's opaque. There is no light passing through this. Now, there are plastics out there that are translucent. They wouldn't be this durable. Most of the plastics I've seen of this variety are not uh, all that transparent or translucent. I have seen ones that were uh, less durable than this. Uh, you sometimes see them in some of the kind of jerry can kind of things out there. I've seen kind of jugs that were, but they're thin. I mean, they're very thinly walled stuff, and they don't would not have this. They don't have this kind of structural integrity to it. So awesome integrity, good overall aesthetic design, usability. I like the aesthetics. I like the asymmetric hole. Again, I'd make that a little bit longer, but that's just me. But again, this could be this particular one had a little defect. They cut it off and they shipped it anyway. Um, but yeah, they absolutely wasted their time in engraving numbers and letters into a mold that are going to wear out faster, that are going to cost more to make, going to cost more to repair or replace in the future. I'm baffled. I got to tell you, I just work in manufacturing, but I've been in it for 40 years. And if somebody suggested to me, I'd be, what kind of material are you going to make this out of? And if they showed me a sample, I'm going to say, well, why the heck are you putting letters and numbers on this? You can't read them. Just make the inside of the mold smooth. It'll last longer. That seems really simple to me. But apparently someone had an idea and that idea succeeded. Now, I should point out that having seen many designs of things over the years, sometimes things are designed because it's a fad. You will literally see the evolution of molds over the course of 40 years of production equipment. I have seen it. And you can see phases that it's gone through where people thought this was a good idea and they realized, it wasn't a good idea, and they moved on to something else. And I have also seen engineers go head to head where an engineer is convinced they have a better idea. So they will design something that is different from how someone else has designed something, specifically because it's different from how someone else designed something. They don't want to be accused of copying. They don't want to be seen as having no original ideas, so they had to copy. So they will come up with their own design, convince themselves that it's better, whether it is or not, and implement it. And quite frankly, the user that has to produce the things in that process could very well suffer for this, but the engineer gets to feel like they accomplished something. And if they're correct, then they get kudos, and the original engineer, gets knocked down a peg. And if they're wrong, they can spin it any way they want to. They can move on with their lives, no big deal. But the people that have to produce these things are now stuck with something that doesn't work as well, and will literally have to suffer for this for the entire time that product is produced, which can be decades. So, yeah, designing things they should be made to be elegant. I know that elegant's hard. Complexity is easy. Elegance is hard. But the first time you made something like this, didn't anybody ask about that? How does the consumer read these numbers and letters? And the answer is they can't. So why put them in our mold and waste time and money and future resources for repair or replacement? And I'm sure that somebody in management still thought it was a good idea and said, do it anyway.